Good afternoon. Today, the Supreme Court ruled on the constitutionality of the Trudeau carbon tax. The Supreme Court recognized that policies related to emission reduction touch on both federal and provincial jurisdiction. Conservatives prefer a collaborative approach to tackling climate change to make progress while also helping maintain a strong economy. Let me be clear. Canada's Conservatives will repeal Mr. Trudeau's carbon tax. We will protect the environment and fight climate change, but we won't be doing that by making the poorest Canadians pay. Les conservateurs du Canada vont abolir la taxe sur le carbone de M. Trudeau. Nous allons protéger l'environnement et lutter contre les changements climatiques, mais nous n'allons pas le faire en obligeant les plus vulnérables à payer plus. After promising not to, Mr. Trudeau tripled the carbon tax, jeopardizing even hundreds of thousands of more jobs in Canada. Under the Trudeau Liberals, Canada's unemployment rate is amongst the highest in the G7, and we are experiencing the worst economic growth since the Great Depression. It's impossible to understand why Mr. Trudeau would choose now, of all times, to put more Canadians out of work. The Supreme Court highlighted the risk of carbon leakage between the provinces. The same risk of leakage, jobs, investment, also exists between Canada and the United States. Canada's Conservatives will put forward a clear and comprehensive climate plan focused on reducing emissions, but we won't do so on the backs of the poorest and of working Canadians. Les conservateurs du Canada vont présenter un plan climatique clair et exhaustif, axé sur la réduction des émissions, mais nous n'allons pas le faire au détriment des Canadiens les plus vulnérables et de ceux qui travaillent. Our relentless focus will remain on securing jobs, securing the economy, and securing our future. I'm happy to take your questions.
We'll now start the question period. Nous allons maintenant commencer la période de questions. Opérateur, avez-vous une première question?
Yes, thank you. Merci. Our first question is from David Turton of CBC News. Please go ahead.
Mr. O'Toole, good afternoon. In the Environment Minister's remarks, he took some shots at your party and, also invoked a lot of partisan language. What message do you think that this sends to conservative-minded premiers who've been, holdouts on carbon pricing?
Well, they haven't been holdouts on carbon pricing, David. In fact, British Columbia and some other provinces were regulating, were having emission reduction programs, be it a carbon tax, be it a cap-and-trade system, being a large emitter, before Mr. Trudeau imposed a federal tax on top of those programs. I think what we take from this case is we have to work on this collaboratively, and Conservatives will focus relentlessly on recovering from the recession, creating jobs, and we will have a plan to reduce emissions.
Yeah, follow-up.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes. So, given the Supreme Court recognized today that, climate change is a national problem and it needs a national solution, what is another option that could be taken to address this national issue that's not a carbon tax?
Well, the court said, David, that there's a double aspect to regulating here, that the provinces have a role and the federal government have a role, and that there's paramountcy. That's what happened with this decision. They also recognize leakage between the provinces. Emissions could change. Just like our competitive states, Michigan, Ohio, we compete against those states for jobs, for investment. We need to grow all parts of our economy to recover from COVID. So our focus will be on creating jobs, and we will have a plan to reduce emissions by partnering with the provinces and emitters.
Thank you. We'll now go in the room for one question.
Oui, bonjour, M. O'Toole, Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada. Bon, la Cour suprême a tranché ce matin. Elle dit que les changements climatiques constituent un défi existentiel. Votre parti n'a pas adopté une motion il y a quelques jours pour justement reconnaître l'existence des changements climatiques. la Cour tranche en faveur d'Ottawa de la tarification sur le carbone. Est-ce que vous n'avez pas l'impression de manquer le bateau en ce moment?
En fait, il y a beaucoup de politiques en ce qui concerne l'environnement et les changements climatiques dans notre dossier des politiques maintenant comme un parti. C'est important pour notre parti, c'est important pour moi personnellement. On va avoir un plan sur les changements climatiques dans la prochaine élection. On doit créer les opportunités, les emplois pour les Canadiens, tout en respectant un plan de réduire les émissions de gaz à effet de serre.
Okay. Puis, comment est-ce que vous pouvez dire que la taxe sur le carbone se fait au détriment des plus vulnérables quand plus de 90% de la taxe carbone est redonnée aux familles et qu'il y a plein d'analystes qui ont montré que c'est justement les familles les plus vulnérables qui reçoivent le plus d'argent?
Comme j'ai dit, la tarification du carbone n'existe pas aux États-Unis. Il y a une compétition pour les opportunités, pour les investissements, pour les emplois entre le Canada et les États-Unis. C'est injuste, c'est inapproprié. On doit cibler sur une relance économique pour le Canada après la pandémie. Ça serait ma priorité comme Premier ministre, mais je vais aussi avoir un plan sérieux et clair sur l'environnement parce qu'on doit réduire les émissions de gaz à effet de serre.
Mr. O'Toole, Mike Couture with Global National. Seeing as Canadians are watching now and they want to hear you say more than you'll have a plan, I just wanted to know how today's Supreme Court decision will inform your plan and policy on climate change.
Well, I want to thank the court for confirming that this is a global challenge and the fact they recognize the issue with carbon leakage between provinces. We also have that same issue. We've seen billions of dollars leave Canada and go to the United States. So we need to be smarter. We need policies focused on job creation and partnering with provinces and emitters to lower emissions without losing jobs. That will be our priority. And Michael, we're in the process of creating a platform on that for the next election.
Just as a follow-up, you mentioned the U.S. The American Petroleum Institute has endorsed putting a price on carbon. So I wanted to ask you, especially coming out of last weekend's convention, what is your message to conservatives about putting a price on carbon so that you can find that level of acceptance within your party that'll be good enough to campaign on and good enough to win an election on?
Well, what's the price of carbon in the United States, Michael? There isn't one. So we have to have an approach that doesn't see a drain of investments and jobs from Canada. That's already started. Now Mr. Trudeau wants to triple his carbon tax at a time that small businesses are hanging on by a thread. Canadians are finding an affordability crunch in Ontario and Quebec and BC in particular. So we need to focus on regrowing our economy and having a climate change plan that will get our emissions down without pushing jobs out of Canada.
But is the U.S. not having one really an excuse?
We need a made-in-Canada plan, Michael. That's what I'm creating. A tax on the poorest, a tax on small business, a tax that will actually see auto jobs in Ontario leave to Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania is not a smart plan if we want a prosperous country. On doit avoir un plan spécifique pour le Canada. On doit réduire les émissions de gaz à effet de serre tout en respectant une relance économique. Il y a un risque pour les emplois, particulièrement les usines en Ontario et au Québec, parce qu'il n'y a pas un prix pour le carbone aux États-Unis. Donc, on doit avoir un plan sérieux et spécifique pour le Canada, mais je vais avoir une priorité pour les emplois pour les Canadiens après la pandémie.
Thank you. This is all the time we had for the press conference.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you.